Let's get more into that because Donald Trump claims, and some polls show, he's received more support from Black and Hispanic communities. But he says he's enjoyed that support because of the mugshot that was taken last summer when he was charged in the Georgia election interference case. Trump's remarks came during a Black American business leaders barbershop roundtable hosted by Ben Carson and Congressman Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt, where he spoke to the panel by phone, saying his support from Black voters has, quote, gone through the roof because Black Americans can relate to his being a felon.
But since this has happened, like the mugshot is the best. It just beat Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra by a lot, by the way. Beat him by a lot. But that's the number one mugshot of all time. It's really an amazing thing. Since it happened, the support among the Black community and the Hispanic community has skyrocketed. It's been amazing. Really been amazing. It's been actually very nice to see.
Rev, can you think of anything more patronizing than saying Black voters like me because I've been arrested, because I have a mugshot, because I am a felon, and just saying it explicitly the way he's saying it?
And really insulting them in their face, saying that because I have a mugshot, because I'm a criminal, Blacks like me. And if that is not criminalizing Blacks, I mean, do we not have an insult level? If any president had said that to any other ethnic group, it would be outrage. It is insulting. It shows what he thinks of us. And he does think of us. I think of us that way. I come from New York like he does. Every chance he got, including Central Park 5, he supported the criminalizing of Blacks. He called for the death penalty of 5 innocent young Black men. So that's what he thinks of us. The irony is he's got some sitting there applauding it. Why wouldn't you tell Black businessmen how Black businesses benefited under your 4 years in office? He couldn't say that because it didn't happen.
So, Simone, as you look at that scene yesterday, a barbershop set up, Donald Trump not there, calling in on a speakerphone and saying what he said yesterday, what do you see in that?
Willie, what I would like to say is that appropriate for national television. So I would just say, Reverend Sharpton is sitting there, and I respect the Rev. What I see there is, folks really love to throw the term pandering around when it comes to Democrats and Black voters. But what Donald Trump is doing is a level of insult and pandering, and I'm unsure about who he is pandering to. About having folks like Byron Donalds and Ben Carson, whom know better, right? Sit there and allow this gentleman who says he wants the votes of Black voters in this country to call into a Black voter roundtable at the barbershop with Black business owners to talk about his mugshot and his felonies is the epitome of spitting in the face of Black people. And I just really have to wonder about the Black elected officials, the Black leaders in their respective communities who are propping Donald Trump up and letting him spit in their faces. So when I talk about the fact that, voters, they're Black voters, base voters that are, I don't really know what I'm going to do this election, I don't think the woman that I referenced in Virginia is deciding if she's really going to vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. It's like, am I going to vote for Joe Biden or am I fighting the couch? But what Donald Trump is doing cannot be excused. This is not outreach. This is insult. And I hope that he is asked about that on the debate stage tonight.
Jen Palmieri, we shouldn't be surprised, but at times we are surprised, or at least I'm surprised, about how everything, no matter what it is about Donald Trump makes it about himself. The number one mugshot of all time. That's the quote he had about his mugshot. It's the number one mugshot of all time. Bigger than Elvis's, bigger than Frank Sinatra's. So tonight, from your perspective, having been around campaigns and handling candidates in campaigns who are preparing for a debate, what about the idea that while all elections are about the future, it seems now in this cultural weird time that we're living in that nobody remembers things that happened 2 months ago or certainly 3 or 4 years ago. There's very little recollection or real feeling about what happened on January 6th in the Capitol, the COVID and shutting down schools. That seems to be a distant memory to a lot of people. But what about the idea of the President of the United States standing on a stage and reminding people that while he is president, How would you like to wake up the morning after election realizing that the United States is represented in the Oval Office by a convicted felon? Things like that, just going right at it right away. What would your advice be?
I mean, you're thinking, who's your audience, right? I mean, there's Trump's base. You can't worry about them. So your audience, there is, I mean, Simone makes a very good point that part of this debate is needs to, there's a lot about Joe Biden we don't know in terms of what he's accomplished. And he needs to spend, you got to come out of this with a sense of, oh, he has actually accomplished a lot that's making a difference in my life. There's a new foundation here, and he can grow from that in term 2. So you can't lose sight of that. But there's that, the Haley voters, the independents that are concerned about the conviction, that need to hear that. I think I'd say that kind of, as you said, like Mike, a grounded, sober assessment of what that would be like for the United States of America to elect a convicted felon to sit in the Oval Office, and what a mockery that could make of our democracy. And I continue to believe the most effective way to use, but I think the most effective way to use this felon charge against, or felon conviction against Trump, is to say he did not accept the results of the Iowa caucus in 2016. He did not accept the results of the election in 2020, and he will not accept the results of this fair trial. He will not live by the rules of democracy, and he can never be in the Oval Office again.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.